Hello there, my name is Sarah and welcome back to my bookshelves. Today we have a very fun video. I've seen a couple of people do something like this. I think Emmy, A Clockwork Reader. I'm trying to think of anyone else that I got inspiration from. If I think of it, it will be in the description along with those two channels. Today we are going to be ranking every book that I had to read in high school. Most of these were for an English class. One of them was for AP US History, but I think that's it. So as a little background, I took regular English my freshman and sophomore year. My school did not offer an honors English program. And then I did online school for my junior year and half of my senior year. So I took AP Language and Composition and then half of AP Literature and Composition. I came back halfway through my senior year and took Honors English 4 and Novels and Short Stories for a semester. So I was kind of all over the place, just bouncing around. This is what I ended up reading for those classes, and we're gonna rank them. We're gonna see what I liked, what I didn't like. I think they're in alphabetical order, so not in order of when I read them. So that's the premise of this video. I think it's gonna be fun. Let's get into it. Okay, here you can see our tiers. We've got S through F. S is like, these made it to my favorite books of all time list. 5-star books, like would read it again outside of the classroom. Maybe I have reread them. Then it gets worse from there. And F is, I absolutely hated it, did not want to read it, despised discussing it in class, all that good stuff. This is all the in-between. I didn't come up with creative names for the tiers. Sorry. Okay. First up, we've got Twelfth Night by William Shakespeare. When I read this play, I really, really loved it. It was the first Shakespeare I read because my freshman year English teacher did not teach tragedies. Usually in 9th grade in America, you read Romeo and Juliet. But my freshman year teacher did not teach anything too sad. He couldn't do it. I really liked it at the time, but after reading more Shakespeare, it definitely isn't up to par with some of the other Shakespeare I've read. Yeah, it's pretty like mediocre, to be honest. It's either gotta go in like a C or a B tier. I think we'll put it in B just because of the experience of reading it. It was a lot of fun. You know, we acted it out in class. It was my first real like English class reading. So that just has a special place in my heart. So we'll say that's a solid B tier for Twelfth Night. Next up, we've got 1984 by George Orwell. I've read this book. I read it once just on my own, and then I had to read it my senior year for Novels and Short Stories, and I still liked it a lot. I think I honestly liked it better the second time. It's a good book. It's not an all-time favorite of mine, but it's really close. I get a lot out of it, and I think it serves its purpose really well. It gets its message across, the writing is good, the story is interesting. Yeah, but did I enjoy necessarily reading it and discussing it in class? Not really. I think for a classroom setting, it was really slow. We read a lot of it together and it was kind of, you know, but the book itself is pretty good. It's good. We'll say that's an A tier book. 1984. A tier. Ooh. Okay, this is A Long Way Gone by Ishmael Beah. I did my second semester of AP Language and Composition, my final project about Long Way Gone. This is the memoir of a boy soldier in Sierra Leone who has photographic memory. So all of these traumas from his past, he can relive perfectly. This is heartbreaking. It's a heartbreaking story. Genuinely, while reading this book, I also had to be reading, I called it like my fun book, and I had to have like a middle grade that I could switch back and forth to so that I wouldn't fall into a very deep depression. But this was the start of me reading books from outside of European countries, and this book is brilliant. It is so well written, it is beautiful, it is devastating. I cried like a baby. It made me rethink my whole entire life and was just so affecting. Like, genuinely, when I read this book, this book made me a better person. It was a 5-star read. I think everybody should read this. This is S tier book for sure. Alrighty, our next is a short story, which is Araby by, I think, James Joyce. Yeah, James Joyce. I read this for AP Lit, I want to say, yeah. I will preface this by saying I am not a short story person. All of the short stories on this list are going to be ranked very low. I do not enjoy them, really. There are very few short stories that have ever gotten to me, and I don't think any of those are on this list. Sorry. Araby was kind of boring. It was about this boy, he's in love with this girl, he lives in a tiny little Irish town, nothing happens. All he wants to do is go to this Araby and buy something for this girl, have a big romantic gesture, but he gets there and it's closed mostly, and it's nothing, and this, like, the glimmer kind of fades away. He realizes it's kind of just normal, boring life. This wasn't my least favorite short story I've ever read. Did I like it more or less than 12th Night, though, is the question. I thought analyzing it, here's the thing, I really don't like analyzing short stories because I feel like they have to be so explicit and so self-explanatory because there's so few pages to, like, create a full analogy or anything, really. So analyzing it sucked, but I did kind of enjoy this story. I think we can put it in B tier. It had a great atmosphere. The vibes were great. We'll put it in B tier, but definitely behind 12th Night. Yeah. Okay, another short story. Next up, we've got Bartleby the Scrivener by Herman Melville. I also read this in AP Lit. I liked this one. I did. Not as much as I had hoped to. I had very high hopes for this, which I think, like, put it a little bit lower on my list, sadly, because I had kind of built it up in my head. But I did really like Bartleby. I liked the character of Bartleby a lot. Basically, Bartleby he's a scrivener. He's a copywriter, and he just decides to, like, stop doing his job and saying, what does he say? He's like, oh, he's got a catchphrase. I haven't read this in a while, but he basically was like, I don't want to, and just stops doing his job, and then he moves into the office and won't leave this guy alone. He just doesn't do anything. It's like, I don't suppose I will. I love that for him. That's amazing. Sorry, that made me laugh. And his boss is just really trying to figure out what the heck to do with Bartleby. Okay, thinking about it, this story, it was fun. It was fun. It had good commentary. Yeah, I actually did really like Bartleby the Scrivener. Once again, like analyzing it, don't love analyzing or writing about short stories. It's just not for me. I feel like there's not enough substance really to make it worthwhile. But the story itself, I enjoyed. Honestly, that's kind of A tier, I think. Yeah, Bartleby can go in A. Oh, Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre. Immediately S tier. Does it go before or after A Long Way Gone? I think before. Sorry. Jane Eyre. I love this book. 5 stars. I have talked about Jane to death on this channel, but it is the story of a young girl who grows up, finds herself, finds her religion, her place in the world, and she's 18, reading this in class last semester of senior year as an 18-year-old about to go away to college. So much. It's so good. And also the writing is just beautiful. I read this with my favorite English teacher ever, who made it such a wonderful experience. And I wrote my favorite essay I've ever written on Jane Eyre. I still think about it to this day. It's like my best work. Love it. Love it. 5 stars, S tier book. Okay, Julius Caesar. I read this sophomore year, and I really loved Julius Caesar. This like put 12th Night to shame. Reading those back to back, it was crazy. It was crazy because Julius Caesar is just so good. The writing, the characters, I think like the character of Brutus alone makes this play so good. I also read because we read it aloud in class, I think I did Brutus and Mark Antony was who I played because nobody else wanted to read them. And it was just so much fun. My best friend played Caesar. I got to kill her. Amazing. Everybody knows this story, but the play just tells it so well and makes it so interesting. That's A tier for sure. Honestly, I think it goes before 1984 because that's a really good play. I thoroughly enjoyed Julius Caesar. Oof. The Kite Runner. Oof. It hurts. It hurts just to think about. This is a devastating story. I don't really want to say too much about it. It's about these 2 boys growing up in Afghanistan. It's about Afghan culture and immigration and a lot of other things that need a lot of content warnings. I read this second semester of my senior year in novels and short stories. Honestly, it was like quite triggering for me. I did not enjoy reading it. It was very dark and I don't enjoy reading things that dark, especially about children. Just not fun at all. There's a lot of really great symbolism in this book. It's very interesting, but I wish I'd never read it, to be honest, because it was so heartbreaking. As a book, it's good, but it was too much. It was way too much. And A Long Way Gone is somewhat similar. It's all of these terrible things happening to a young boy and part of his older self reflecting back on it. But I think it was done much better than The Kite Runner, which just kind of tore me to shreds and made me feel sick all the time. So it was a good book. I'm gonna put it in B. but at the very end, I do think like I would recommend it with a lot of content warnings, a lot. It's a good book, but personally, I did not enjoy reading it for a second. Next up, we have Lord of the Flies, which is one of my all-time favorite books. I love Lord of the Flies. I read it when I was a freshman or sophomore, just on my own, and then we studied it the second semester of my senior year in Honors 4. I really, really love Lord of the Flies. I think it's a phenomenal book. The symbolism, the characters, the commentary, perfect, and it's funny, it's witty, and so poignant. So poignant. I love this book. I think it's amazing, and it's short. I find that books that are either very short or very long are much more impressive to me, because for short books you have to be able to fit your whole story, everything you want to say, in that much space. And then long books, I mean, you have to keep engagement, you have to keep a story going. If a book is just 300 pages, it's much less impressive to me. But Lord of the Flies manages to tell an incredible story in such a short amount of time. And the ending to this book, a lot of people hate it. I think it's brilliant. I think it's the most brilliant end to a book I've ever read. I'm not even joking. So this, of course, has to go, no, above Jane Eyre, at the very top of my list. S tier book. I love it. Ooh, The Martian. I loved The Martian. This book had me laughing out loud so much. I read this in novels and short stories. We got to grow a potato. It was a really good time. And the end of the book had me bawling. It had me weeping with joy, with positivity and hope. This book is a glass half full. It is. This book is the opposite of Lord of the Flies, in which it has so much hope for humanity and persevering. It makes me so happy just to think about. I love this book. It's so sweet. I don't know if it quite belongs with these literal, you know, beautiful classics, but it's definitely an A tier book for sure, above Julius Caesar. So it's bordering on S tier. But I think if we're taking language and writing into consideration, this has some very beautiful passages, but is it Jane Eyre level? No. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I read this book also 2 or 3 times. I've read it once before. I read it in class, and then I read it for class my sophomore year. This book is a classic. It's very, very good. I think it's a wonderful way of discussing very hard topics in American history. Putting it into conversation with children and, you know, innocent kids who do not understand, who don't get why people who look different from them should be treated worse. I think that makes people consider that point of view a lot more. I think it recontextualizes racism and is really brilliant. And then it's also just a coming of age story, which is very, very sweet. This book talks about drug addiction and murder and rape, but then also school plays and just, it's everything. It really is. It is a very, very good book. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as The Martian or Julius Caesar though. If I had to rank, because I read Julius Caesar in the same year, and if I had to rank it, I would say I enjoyed it a little less but definitely far more than 1984 or Bartleby. And I am 100% going to reread this book again. It has its place forever in human history. It's To Kill a Mockingbird, you know? Next up, oh, okay, this one is a short story. It's more of an essay that I actually loved. This is a Modest Proposal. Who wrote Modest Proposal? Jonathan Swift. There we go. This was the first, like, Irish short story that I enjoyed. Until then, I had kind of hated Irish literature. I hate to say that. I'm very Irish. I'm incredibly Irish. So I saw this, I was like, oh, great. It's another commentary about the state of Ireland. I loved this. This is so funny. It's a political essay saying that to fix the economic situation and poverty and homelessness in Ireland, people should start eating babies because, you know, what's a big expense? Babies. And people are hungry. They need something to eat. Eat the babies. Eat the big expense. It's such a good satire. It's so funny. Very witty. I think this is it is a masterpiece in satire. It wrote the rule book. Oh, I really enjoyed this. This is an S tier short story though. I never thought I would put a short story up there, but it's very good. Oh no, this is actually really stumping me. Yeah, I think it has to go in S tier. A Modest Proposal. It'll go at the end. It goes at the end. But that was like, this short story really got me into satire. It made me care about it. It made me care about this genre of literature. It made me care about short stories as a whole. Until then, I would probably have rather like stuck a pin in my eye than read short stories. But after this, I was convinced that, you know, they have some value. So that can go in S tier. Okay, next up we have The Most Dangerous Game. I read this freshman year as well. I feel like everybody knows about this. This guy hunts people on an island. It's pretty basic. I enjoyed it while I read it, but looking back on it, it was kind of really boring. The thing about The Most Dangerous Game is that it is so heavily referenced all the time. After you read this, you are going to see reference after reference to The Most Dangerous Game. It's a very important short story to read, but I didn't really care about it. Like, I got kind of invested toward the end. The beginning is so slow and so boring. Yeah, I really only cared once the action started, you know, but I honestly couldn't tell you how it ends, even though that was my favorite part. So I think that's like a C. C tier for me. Most Dangerous Game. Yeah. Next up we have Night by Elie Wiesel. This book is devastating, really. It's a story of a young Jewish boy's experience in the Holocaust. He was taken to Auschwitz. He saw some of the most terrible things a human could ever see. He was separated from most of his family, and he survived and wrote about it, and he was very young. I read this book when I was about the same age he was. I could not imagine at that age having the level of strength he does. This book is also really devastating, but kind of like with A Long Way Gone and To Kill a Mockingbird, I think putting these major terrible events contextualized through the eyes of children is so important. It makes people realize the humanity of the situation more. It's brilliant. It's brilliantly written. It's so sad and should be read in every classroom ever at least once, because some people still don't know about the horrors of the Holocaust, and they need to. So this is an S tier book next to A Long Way Gone. Yeah, it's brilliant, brilliant novel. Okay, up next we have The Odyssey. I didn't read the whole Odyssey, but we read quite a few books of it my sophomore year. And I actually really enjoyed it. I don't have a whole lot to say about The Odyssey. It was good. I was invested in this story. I really liked the writing. It was the first epic I had read or, you know, kind of learned about. So that was really cool. I just had a good time with this one, really. We read, you know, all the biggest parts of it. So we kind of got like the outline of the story, and I thought it was really, really great. That's an A tier for sure. I loved The Odyssey. It's a classic for a reason. You know, people still read it to this day for a reason. It's good. Oedipus Rex. Oh, Oedipus Rex by Sophocles. I love this book. Well, this play. I love it so much. Oedipus Rex is another like very referenced piece of literature in media and pop culture. It's the story of a young man, a king, who he was taken from his family as a baby because of this prophecy, and then he ends up like falling in love with his mother. And it's this whole mess, and the writing is beautiful, the story is beautiful. It is the pinnacle of a tragedy. I love it. I think it's amazing. This has to go in S tier. Loved Oedipus Rex. An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. It's a short story. It's about perspective. It teaches point of views and perspective. I didn't care. I hate it when short stories have like a specific literary purpose. Like this one's about hyperbole and this one's about point of view. Make it about something interesting. Make it about a story. Ever thought of that? Has a short story writer ever thought of that? I don't think so. I don't think so. We're back on my short story hating train. D tier. Didn't like it. Didn't care. Okay. But I liked it more than Why I Live at the P.O. Box by, was it Eudora Welty? I think. I can't really see it. Why I Live at the P.O. Box. Or not P.O. Box, just Why I Live at the P.O. Not in the box. That would be crazy. It's a story of this dysfunctional family and this unreliable narrator, which once again, these two I read together for AP Lit. They're just about point of views and perspectives and unreliable narrators. The stories themselves have no substance. I didn't care about the characters. I didn't care about anything. They're literally just there for explanation of a literary phenomenon, which don't do that. It's so boring. Nobody cares. Okay. A Rose for Emily, another short story. I read this in AP Lit. This probably goes C tier. Yeah, I liked it more than The Most Dangerous Game, but it's another short story, another thing kind of about perspective. I didn't really care. I can't really talk about the book because like spoilers, but it's just about this woman whose husband has mysteriously disappeared, but there's really not that much of a mystery. Like, you know from the beginning what happens. It's kind of boring. All right, next up we have The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I love this book. This book is so good. Once again, difficult topics through the eyes of a child will always get me right in the feels. This book is really, really brilliant. It's got to go along with Night and A Long Way Gone. It's the story of Pecola, a young black girl in the South in like the 1920s who just wants to be beautiful, and in her mind that means looking like the white girls she sees, the white girls who taunt her, and her life is so miserable. It's terrible, and all she wants is to have the bluest eyes. It's a really, really heartbreaking book, but very important, very poignant, and I loved it a lot. Next up, we have Persepolis, which is a graphic novel about the Iranian Revolution, and I liked this one. It's kind of in the same vein as Night and A Long Way Gone, but I didn't enjoy it quite as much. Actually, I didn't feel like I learned as much because it was a graphic novel, and it focused a lot more on the main character, Marjane, on her life. Like, that's okay. She had her story to tell, and I was there for it. I did like reading it. It did make me cry, and I did learn a lot, but it just didn't have the same effect on me. Maybe because she was like, for most of the book, she was older. She was an adult going through all of this stuff, so I found it more difficult to relate to. So I think I'm gonna put it in, it's an A tier book for sure. We'll put it like by To Kill a Mockingbird. The Sniper, is this by James Joyce? I feel like it's by James Joyce. Nope, it's by Liam O. Flaherty. Okay. I didn't like this book. It's about the Troubles. It's a short story, actually. I did not like this short story because it's a short story. It's about the Troubles. It's about a soldier. He is a sniper, and he is trying to shoot this man, and the whole story takes place in a very short amount of time. You're basically just going through his thoughts. This was very unmemorable. I didn't care. This is also about point of view and perspective. Is there a single short story that's not about that? I don't know. I actually liked it more than those two stories though, so it can be at the front of D tier. Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand. This is an S tier book. Automatically S tier. This is the story of Louis Zamperini, who was an Olympic runner, who was then a soldier in World War II. He was lost at sea for 40 days, and then in Japanese POW camps for the next 2 years. Literally, he went through some of the worst things that humanity can go through. I loved reading a book about the American POW aspect of World War II, because I've read a lot of World War II books about, you know, Jewish, Polish perspectives of the war, but American perspectives, not so much. So that was really fascinating. This book is heartbreaking. My heart was not unbroken, and it's a true story, which was very, very rough. But you follow Louis from a very young age until his death. By the end of this book, I just felt such a connection with him. And the end of this book, where he's home, he's safe, he's been home for a while, but his traumas still affect him. I think that was my favorite part, was that the book did not end when he got home safe. It showed his drinking and his abusive behaviors that he grew into as a coping mechanism, and then him overcoming it. And I bawled like a baby at the end of this book. It's really amazing. 5 star. This is my F tier. This is my F tier. I hated this short story. It's called A Christmas Is it Christmas Memory? A Christmas Memory. It's a stupid book about this little kid baking fruitcake with this old ass woman, and I hated it. It was boring. It had no point. The writing was sickening. I hated it. F tier. And then last but not least, we have The Boar Hunt, which was just like really unmemorable. It was another short story, but I guess the ending was kind of good. Oh yeah, I did like the ending. It's just about these guys. They go to hunt some boars. Boar. I think boar is just the plural. I liked the ending. It actually got me more than A Rose for Emily or Most Dangerous Game. So that's good. But it's still a short story, and I still didn't love it. It was kind of boring and pointless. So that was my last short story / book I read in high school. This is my definitive tier ranking of everything I read. You can kind of gather from these, from this, that I'm a big classics and historical fiction type of gal. Short stories, not my fave, not my favorite thing. But I will say that there's a lot of books in the top 2 tiers. So props to my English teachers for giving me some good stuff to read, you know? It wasn't all that bad. Not at all. And that's all, folks. So I guess thank you so much for coming along, doing this with me. Maybe this gave you some ideas for your TBR. Maybe you have some different opinions from mine, in which case I would love to hear them in the comments. Maybe we can have a little friendly discussion if I hated one of your faves or vice versa. If you enjoyed this video, maybe like and subscribe. That would be cool. And I hope to see you guys again soon. Bye-bye.